Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon, co-author with Peter Vale of the digital book on Practice as a Way of Being. Find it at mylibrary.world. And now to our show. Well, I can actually be brief in this introduction of Kyndra Frazier because she speaks for herself so eloquently in so many ways in regard to not only what she does, but what she's become and becoming as a wonderful person. And so the labels are almost superfluous. What's down deep is what she said when I asked her, how shall I introduce you? She said, I'm a person who loves people. And she puts that to work. So here, folks, is doctoral candidate at Bowling Green State University in their Organization and Development and Change program, and many other things that have led up to this and what she does right now. Kyndra Frazier. Wow, I asked Kyndra Frazier, I couldn't remember her last name. I asked Kyndra, how should I introduce you? And she said, I love people. So I figured, hey, we're going to have a good conversation because so do I. However, she has a number of contexts within which she can enact that love of people. Let me see if I remember. Social worker?
Yes.
Yeah. Any brand of social work, any specialty within social work?
Religious trauma.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's see. Pastor?
Yes.
Are you a preaching pastor, or are you doing just spiritual counseling? Not just.
I am doing spiritual counseling right now. I haven't preached in a long time, but I enjoy preaching. I actually was inducted into the Martin Luther King Jr. Board of Preachers at Morehouse College last year, which was a great.
Wow. That's a huge honor.
Yeah.
And you do have a very firm sounding and a musical voice. I expect that one day you can wind it up and go back in there and do some preaching as well. But I think the spiritual counseling is very important as a person who loves people. And let's see, the last one. This is how, folks, how I met Kyndra. Our mutual friend and colleague, Carol Gorlick, sent me an email saying, I'm working with, the cohorts here at Bowling Green State University, and I know that Kyndra would be someone you'd love to know. And we met last week, Kyndra, didn't we? And I agreed.
We did.
Carol was right. She brings people together. That's one of her gifts, Carol Gorlick.
Mm-hmm.
But as we talked, I thought, there's a lot going on here that taps into my big question, which is, what is practice? Peter Vale said in several ways in our book and in our podcast that you really don't know practice as a whole big general basket. Basically, practice is something that each person uniquely expresses. Yes, the titles like pastor and social worker can kind of give us a clue. But really what practice is what it means to you and what kind of person it's helping you be. Practice is a way of being. So let's start with one, just for the fun of it. Not fun. Yeah, it's fun.
It is.
Let's start with social work, because it's a tough topic that you've chosen to work in.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with what drew you to that particular aspect of social work, religious trauma.
That's a really good question. I was a chaplain resident at a level 1 trauma center in Atlanta, Georgia, right after graduating from seminary. And one of my floors was the surgery ICU floor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And at an interdisciplinary team meeting, I was informed that a patient, African American male, 23 years old, had come in because he attempted to castrate himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was cautioned not to go to his room because his family was very, the word that they used was peculiar, very fundamentalist, and they might not welcome a female clergy person. And I went anyway because I wanted him to know that I was there if he needed to talk, be in conversation. And he found some hospitality in my invitation just to be present with him. And he ended up disclosing that he was having challenges integrating his spirituality and sexuality and couldn't quite figure out what God was calling him to be. He was also in the midst of psychosis, seeing a eunuch outside of his window, and he was lifting up the scripture, Matthew 19, that talks about eunuchs. And at that point, Dr. Fearon, I was just like, I don't know enough to offer him practical support as a chaplain. And so his story and my encounter with him took me to social work school.
I can imagine that was multiple levels of complexity that you would have to, if you seriously wanted to help treat that, there's a lot you'd have to know.
Yeah.
Where did you, you've already had your divinity degree.
Yes.
And where did you go to become this sort of social worker?
I went to Columbia School of Social Work in New York. Yeah.
I've heard of it. I think Columbia. Oh yeah. That's a pretty heavy lift that you went for. It's certainly not a correspondence program. Maybe it's somewhat online, but when you were there, did you have any moment where you thought, this is, I'm not sure this is what I should be doing. Studying this, it's a very heavy subject. I gotta be careful for my own spirit here. And not to be too negative, but once you're in that sort of program, that's when you really know if that's going to be a practice.
I would agree. I actually went not only because of the encounter that I had with a young man, but because I wanted to be a better spiritual leader. I think oftentimes people come seeking their pastors, their rabbis, their imams for support that they are limited in providing. And so I felt like I was at the right place. The only thought that I had while I was there was, man, I wish I would have been aware of a dual master program with the MDiv and a master of social work. So I could have combined that time. But I think that Columbia was the right place for me at that time in my life. And I was able to encounter a wonderful ministry while I was there to be able to serve in. And so I didn't have any regrets or signs of caution.
Was there, in my doctoral work, was Peter Vale, who, and several other fine professors who helped me up over the Rainbow Bridge to a doctorate. Were there a professor or two there at Columbia who saw something in you even more than you knew?
That's a good question. I would say that my experience at Columbia was much different than my experience at Emory, where I received my Master of Divinity. I feel like I was an older student at Columbia, and so I was kind of present for my classes and leaving right out. I wasn't that involved in extracurricular activities. At Kyndra School of Theology, though, it was absolutely life-changing. And I can name several professors that have cultivated my thought leadership around spirituality. Dr. Emmanuel Arte taught me pastoral counseling, as well as Dr. Gregory Ellison. They are both special in different ways. Dr. Larte, I participated in a class called African Traditional Religions and Practices of Healing. And
Wow.
through that course, he took us to Ghana for a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And it was really powerful. We had an opportunity to experience Ghanaian Christian context as well as indigenous spiritual context. And
Mhm.
it just opened up my world even more for deepened appreciation for interfaith as well as inner spirituality and ritual. When we think of practice, the first
Mhm.
thing that I think of when I think of practice when it comes to my life is ritual. It's
Yeah, that's
become
true.
a very important rooting experience for me as a
Mhm.
practice. I would say that Gregory Ellison, he taught me the importance of taking notice of the creativity of spirit. He would often in his courses be so creative in how he taught the lessons and how he guided us. And we still keep in touch today. I'm able to be an animator with his organization, which is called Fearless Dialogues, where
An animator, I've
an
never heard that.
animator, as opposed to a facilitator, because we bring conversations to life. So
Oh,
animating,
I gotta have to change my, I've been facilitating far too long. I much rather
animate.
animate.
Yes. And Greg would love to be in conversation with you. I think you all would hit it off too. Another professor, his name is Dr. Luther Smith. Dr. Luther Smith taught my Howard Thurman class. And Howard Thurman is, to me, one of the greatest Christian mystics that I've ever read. And
Hmm.
um, being in Luther Smith's course was like being in a sanctuary,
Oh,
although
wow.
we were learning very deeply. And I'm trying to think of others.
Well,
Um,
those three are
yeah.
already amazing. But I want to pick up on how does one uh, bring a feeling and maybe an actuality of sanctuary into a course. That's very,
Mm,
very intriguing. And
mhm.
maybe I would like to say that it should be in every course that's taught from kindergarten on. But let's start with yours. What constitutes a sanctuary feeling?
For me, it's the idea of taking us into deep time and not feeling rushed to teach the lesson, taking one's time to cultivate a thought, to deliver it in a way that it unites both your head and your heart.
Mm,
Um,
mm, mm.
yeah, yeah, he's a very dynamic human being.
And he could create that from the beginning and develop you. So, because you're coming in from the city, you're all jazzed up. You probably had a hard time finding, like transportation in or whatever, and you're like, oh, just give me a minute. I need coffee. And instead, he provides sanctuary. How did he do that?
Sanctuary. Yeah.
Did he have candles and stuff?
No candles, just his presence.
Ah,
He had a presence of calm and very measured with his speech. Um, he spoke just very thoughtfully. Um, Nothing was rushed. I always felt like, even though the class may have been an hour, hour and a half, it always felt like 3 hours.
oh, that's
And that
amazing.
wasn't a bad thing. It feeling like 3 hours. It was a really good thing. But um, it was in his embodiment of calm
Mm,
that created a sanctuary for me. I think we live in such a fast paced world. And
mm,
it gets faster as the years go by, as technology continues to expand. And I think that we are often rushed to convey what we need to convey so we can move to the next thing.
oh, yeah.
But he had a way of presencing the moment where that moment was all that there was. And
Mm, mm, mm.
it is a way that I would love to be able to live my life. And I think that so many transitions have happened in the past 5 years where I am learning over again how to embody that sense of calmness.
That's wonderful. And for a person who loves people, you want to be, while you're an animator, you don't want to be someone who makes people anxious at the same time.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
an interesting hat trick, but I'm sure you can do it. So we've talked about two of the ways that your love of people have sustained your energies and your attention. Now you're investing your precious time and your treasure in a, a doctoral program for professionals in organization development and change. And I think the and change part may have uh, rung a bell for you. What drew you to the program originally?
Dr. Steve Cady
Mhm.
is such an enthusiastic thought leader, and his
Mhm.
invitation to create something that is uniquely ours as doctoral students um, pricked my ears. And I think it was the first program that I read information about online, and I felt very heartful when I read it. It
Ah,
didn't feel overly um, disconnected because my background is in business,
yeah.
and I graduated from college, worked for Pepsi Bottling Group in a sales management program, and hated the corporate world. And so,
And the last thing you want is a corporate doctoral program.
exactly. So that was really my impression of business was a field that lacked care for humanity.
I'm
Um,
afraid you're right. Only most good people I know in business would say, "Of course we care about humanity." But
mhm,
when it's manifested in the usual hierarchical and with all the little letters that they throw together to as their own sort of special speak and all of that,
mhm,
it can be very, very hard on people, particularly employees, if
absolutely.
not customers. So, but the way this doctoral program was communicated originally, and then as you got to talk to Steve Cady
Mhm.
and some others, it I heard you say that you felt that you could be more of an instrument in design.
Yes.
Now, granted, there's a string of courses you have to take, but
Mhm.
what's the core of it that has made you feel that you have some more than say in how this program materializes for you?
Mhm. It's the human-centered approach. It's the intentionality of building the curriculum. I,
Mhm.
I believe that Steve and his team, they're always trying to find um, new ways to be more supportive, new ways to be a resource, new ways to create cohesion in the cohort, new ways to offer learning opportunities that are sticky in terms of their ability to resonate with us in a way where we can really internalize the material and go back out and not only teach it but practice it. I
Yeah.
think that is the most important, and I'm learning so much in the program. With I haven't been in business school, of course, since undergrad, and so
Mhm.
most of my colleagues are within the field, whether it's supply chain management or talent management or human resources or instructional design. And it is myself and one more pastor that's in the program. And
Oh,
so I
good,
feel like I am experiencing a whole new language at times, and it feels really good.
good,
Yeah.
good. I I remember you used the same phrase when we first met a week or so ago, that of feeling that like the material is you can embody the material. In other words,
Mhm.
it's not read and slam and go on as much as the way they've chosen and you've chosen as you're reading or hearing or watching these days. So many senses are involved. Uh, but I think that those texts and sounds and sights could go right past a person unless there's something internal to you that says, I think I could use that. Or when you underline and make a note in the margin, do you still do that? I don't know. It says,
Yes.
remember this, this could be useful. So that it's the work of your doing that study, but you're working for yourself. See, the stereotypical corporate idea is I'm doing all this for the professor to prove to the professor that I have paid attention and I have reviewed the knowledge that she or he has put before us.
Yes.
Okay, get a nice B or C or even an A, and you move on. But when you are truly engaged with what you're studying, it's a pleasure.
Yes.
Because hey, this guy so and so who I'm reading right now, there's some really good thought here that I can put into practice. That I can put into practice. If not now, someday. But the good thing about you in a professional program is that there's tomorrow is when you can use some of these concepts. Not someday, which would be true of someone maybe in their early 20s working on a doctorate. So while you're doing this graduate program, let me ask you, because Carol was a person who put us together, how has the cohort model affected your joy in being in the program or your disappointment? I mean, either way, the cohort, it's not an unusual thing now in many graduate programs, but the way that it's been crafted in the way Carol supported it over the years that I've known her now, it's very important because your program isn't a campus-based program. It's residential as far as your periods of time when together. Otherwise, you're seeing each other on Zoom or some other.
Yes, on Zoom.
Yeah. So the cohort must be pretty important.
Oh, the cohort experience is critical, I think, to the success of the program. The first residency we had, Dr. Katie and Dr. Francis Baldwin facilitated the whole weekend. And they're both lovely individually, and they're a dynamic duo collectively. And the way that they facilitated our cohort for the first 3 days that we were together in that first residency just created so much cohesion and camaraderie and support within the cohort that we all committed to certain things because we are all going to graduate together. We committed to graduating together. We committed to being published, everyone. And so the way that people kind of lean in and support each other, they may send a group chat to say, remember, these assignments are due, or this reading is due, or if you need to explore this particular area, this is what I'm working on right now. It's kind of similar. I would love to share with you some of these resources. So it's very endearing for me to be a part of a doctorate program that is not a point of hazing.
That crossed my mind. Look to your left, look to your right. One of these people is going to be out of here by the end of the semester. That kind of, Darwinian approach to graduate studies, which basically said we start with 100, and if 3 finish, then our program is really producing the 3 very, very best people, which may not be true at all.
Right. Yeah.
Smart people would have walked away from that treatment in this era, at least. So that's a wonderful tribute to the cohort. And so you can stay in touch through chat and there's several residencies over the period of a year.
Yes, there are. Every course has a residency, and usually now we are doing some type of presentation, group presentation together, and so that enriches the experience even more. My colleagues all of them are really brilliant. So I'm really honored and humbled to be in this process with them. And so I'm grateful that I chose a program that had a cohort model. It makes a difference in the learning process.
Yeah, because maybe someone listening to this might not know the rigors and the length of time it takes to earn a doctorate. And it's not just earning a credential, it's becoming a doctorate
Yes.
qualified person, becoming another version of, in your case, Kyndra Frazier. And so there's an investment of self there, isn't there?
Yes.
And the sense of, and the word may be overused, but a sense of transformation.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree 1,000%, Dr. Fearon. Yeah.
I can't imagine you transforming another time, but some of you were a business school, and then you went, clergy, all of that, and social work, and now transforming again.
Yes.
Do you have to look at pictures of yourself before to remember who you were? Oh.
I think the work for me now, Dr. Friend, with so many interests and skills is to integrate it all. And
Yeah.
I've been one thing, I'm working on a literature review now, and I'm looking at workplace spirituality. I didn't even know workplace spirituality was a construct until I entered into this program.
Yeah.
But I feel like that lane fits all the things that I am. I would love one day to be a chief workplace spirituality officer, someone who is supportive of the organization's intentionality to create connectedness within the workforce and through a lot of different strategic programming.
I thought
I
you
would
by
love to
from
do
a
that.
company
Yeah,
had
but
a
that's
person
speaking to me
like
right
you in that role. And I think that has a lot to do with whether a for-profit business would add any kind of officership. They have to see that it's going to sell more soap, but or more Pepsi, which is horrible stuff for the teeth. I'm sorry, Pepsi. I said it, not Kyndra.
I agree with you.
No, but I think that's a wonderful. It's to me one of the way we sustain ourselves in practice is not only to look at how we can integrate everything we've done and experienced and learned from before, which we do. Automatically, the brain takes care of that. But when you can put a sort of like a beacon out there a few years ahead and name it, it makes sense, and it might change its name, it might change its location, or whatever it may be. But it seems to me a beacon like having a company so great that it would say, we need a spiritual officer who will interact with all of our leaders and our first line people. And it's not a religious position, it's not a chaplaincy. Even though when I think I know a little bit about the services, that a chaplain, let's say in the Navy, does not come up to a enlisted person and say, "What religion are you?" Oh, I'm a Jewish. Oh, I can't talk to you. No, that they select people and develop chaplaincies, as you did in the hospital, where it makes no difference what your religion is, but I'm here for your spirit.
Right, absolutely. I think that our world is in need of transcending the demarcations of religiosity in order to be able to appreciate the spirit that lies in all of humanity, that animates our livelihood, that causes our hearts to beat and our breaths to inhale and exhale. And I think that because the world, I think I was reading a Pew Research study not too long ago that said that 70% of Americans identify as spiritual and about 75% identify as religious. And I think there's something there because all of those people are in the workforce. And I think that
all of them, yeah, hopefully.
Exactly. So many people are using spirituality and religion to make meaning of life. Why not have someone in a corporate space that can hold space for all of that in a way that's kind and integral and resourceful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, there's your beacon. I see it. I see it up ahead. Well, we're down to our last few minutes of this recorded part of our becoming better acquainted. But let me ask the questions I always ask of doctoral candidates. When are you going to graduate?
I will be graduating May 2027.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
2 more years.
2 more years.
Piece of cake.
When I'm struggling in my writing, I'm going to remember that you said it's a piece of cake. Encouraging.
Well, one of my very best friends now and supported me as editor for the work for Peter in my book is Teo Ford Stiegler, who I'm sure you know.
Yes. Teo's a
And
great human.
he is, and in so many ways, musician and very thoughtful, but also he's a wizard as far as the technologies that have been necessary. In our case, to have a completely digital book was quite extraordinary how he led me through that process. So you do have some fine people, and I'll be on a panel. Let's see, what's the night before Valentine's Day? When's Valentine's Day?
Valentine's Day, I think, is Friday.
Okay. Well, I'm on a panel with Francis and several others, and guess what our topic is?
What is the topic?
Love and leadership.
Ooh,
Isn't that cool?
that is
Love and leadership.
cool.
And the wonderful organization that asked me to be on the panel, as well as Francis, is the person who's been coordinating this symposium is maybe one of your classmates. She's in the doctoral program. I'm awful about
Might be Jillian. Jillian?
No, Elise. Terrible with names, but wonderful experience with her reaching out. But they're located in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, or maybe it's Houston, somewhere in Texas, and they have a group affiliated with the Organization Development Network, but they call themselves a network, and they meet weekly, which I thought was terrific. They're mostly like you know, they may or may not be consulting, but they're definitely very interested in organization life and how to make it work better for people. But they chose the topic of love, not just because it was the day before Valentine, but it was clever marketing, because they could use a lot of hearts. But one of the participants, organizers, reached out to me yesterday he wanted to get some sound bites that he could use. Joel Bennett, I think. And so I think the last question he said is, what do you think about love and leadership? And I said, why use the and? I mean, I wish I'd used that soundbite because it sounds pretty powerful. But basically, take the and out. Love, leadership, love. It's, to me, leadership is an act of courage taken on behalf of others in the moment, whose well-being matters to you.
Yes.
And so you're going to stick your neck out a little further than others. You're going to ask the tougher question. You're going to step across to see how far it is from stone to stone on that creek, and then others will follow. But you're doing it on their behalf and not just, hey, look at me. So love is there, and loveless leadership. You want to, well, it's just a term, leadership. Now take the love out and look at our current administration, and you'll see the horrors of abusing such a nice designation as leader or learner or any of the others.
Mhm.
So it'll be fun. And it's, let's see, 7:15, I think. This is Texas time.
Okay.
My time would be 7 or something. It's probably earlier out there. But if I think of it after the call, I'll try to send you a link to it. Not that you need to add more stuff, but I thought when we first started the show about the spirit in the workplace, love in the spirit seemed to have an awful lot to do with each other. So
I think so too.
yeah. So anyway, this is Kyndra Frazier, who is a person who loves people.
Mhm.
And I think now that you've listened to us talk for a half an hour, folks, you'll agree with that designation. A wonderful person, a great laugh, and it's made me feel very good just talking to you. So thank you very much.
And you made me feel very good. Thank you for inviting me, Dr. Fearon.
Thank you for listening to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. If you'd like to hear more, go to Podomatic, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And please consider purchasing our book on practice as a way of being at mylibrary.world. It's a digital book with lots of features that you do not see in a conventional book. So once again, thank you, and I look forward to your listening again.